The Awakening. The Caldari Imperium had ruled the Milky Way for over 10,000 years. Their crystalline ships, elegant geometric forms that resembled cut gemstones, patrolled the spiral arms with unwavering authority. Grand Imperator Vexthul stood aboard his flagship, the Infinite Radiance, gazing at the holographic display of his domain. 97 species, 8,000 habitable worlds, and unchallenged dominance across the stars. Another glorious cycle, Imperator, said High Strategist Malcor, her scaled skin catching the blue light of the tactical displays. The Centauri rebellion has been quelled. The primitive species on Nexus 9 has accepted our governance. The galaxy remains in perfect harmony. Vexthul's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of satisfaction among the Caldari. Their species had evolved from apex predators on a harsh desert world, developing both intelligence and ruthlessness in equal measure. Their society valued order above all else, and they had imposed that order across the stars for millennia. And yet, he said, I sense a disharmony. Something elusive. Imperator. A feeling. Nothing more. His attention turned to the holographic display, specifically to the darkened section near the outer rim. The Forbidden Sector. How long has it been quarantined? 15,000 years, Imperator. Since the Great Purge. The Great Purge. Few spoke of it now. A bloody chapter best forgotten. The ancient texts called it a necessary evil, the eradication of a dangerous species that threatened galactic harmony. The details had faded into myth over the millennia, preserved only in the most restricted historical archives. Deploy a reconnaissance vessel. I wish to know what lies in that darkness. High Strategist Malcor's skin paled slightly. Imperator, the ancient protocols explicitly forbid. I am the protocols. Vexthul interrupted. Deploy the vessel. 3 cycles later, the reconnaissance vessel Truth Seeker entered the Forbidden Sector. Its captain, First Explorer Zintar, maintained regular communication with Imperial Command as they penetrated deeper into the abandoned region of space. Remarkable. Zintar's voice echoed through the command center. There are signs of ancient warfare here. Daedrus fields stretching across entire systems, but the readings we're getting. Some of these fragments are emitting energy signatures after 15,000 years. Impossible, muttered Malcor. Wait, Zintar's voice suddenly took on an edge of alarm. We're detecting a massive energy spike. Something's activating. By the first egg, it's enormous. A structure. No, multiple structures across the sector are powering up simultaneously. The transmission crackled with static. Imperial Command, we're being scanned. Multiple sources. The energy signatures are like nothing in our database. Wait, there's a message being broadcast. It's in an ancient language. The translation matrix is processing. It says, the transmission cut off abruptly. Truth Seeker, respond, ordered Vexthul. Truth Seeker, this is Imperial Command. Respond immediately. Only silence answered. 12 hours later, the Emergency Council of the Caldari Imperium convened. High Strategist Malcor presented the final transmission from the Truth Seeker, enhanced and cleaned by their best technicians. The message, she said gravely, has been translated. It said, Operation Starfall complete. Awakening protocols initiated. Humanity returns. The council chamber erupted in chaos. The oldest members, those who had access to the restricted archives, reacted with particular horror. Impossible. Elder Counselor Jevkur's voice cut through the pandemonium. The humans were eradicated. Their worlds were burned to ash. Their fleet destroyed. No species could survive such devastation. Grand Imperator Vexthul raised his hands for silence. Clearly, our ancestors failed, and now we must prepare. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Forbidden Sector, inside a massive structure that had remained dormant for millennia, Admiral Ilara Chen opened her eyes for the first time in 15,000 years. The cryostasis chamber hissed as it opened, medical nanites swarming around her, repairing cellular damage and stabilizing her vital functions. Her mind, preserved perfectly in the advanced stasis field, immediately assessed for surroundings. "Status report," she commanded, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Welcome back, Admiral Chen," responded the AI. "Operation Starfall has been successfully completed. Date: approximately 50,000 CE by the old Earth calendar. Stasis preservation optimal. Fleet status 100% operational. The awakening sequence is proceeding across all installations." Ilara sat up slowly, accepting the uniform presented by a service drone. The fabric, made of advanced materials, adjusted to her body temperature and fitted perfectly. 15,000 years had passed, yet she felt as though she had merely taken a long nap. "And our targets?" she asked. "The Caldari Imperium now controls approximately 87% of the Milky Way." The AI responded. "Descended from the alliance that attempted the genocide of humanity, their technology has advanced only incrementally. They've grown complacent in their dominance." Ilara nodded grimly. The memories were still fresh for her. The unprovoked attack on Earth and its colonies, the desperate defense, the realization that humanity was facing an enemy determined to wipe them from existence. And then the audacious plan, Operation Starfall. Rather than fight a losing war, humanity had feigned extinction. The brightest minds had created a technology that mimicked planetary destruction while actually phasing the worlds into a pocket dimension. The remaining human fleets had retreated to the outer rim, establishing hidden bases where they could enter stasis while automated systems continued to advance their technology. For 15,000 years, humanity had slept while their AIs and automated factories evolved their technology far beyond what would have been possible through normal development. The plan had been simple: wait until the enemy believed humanity was long extinct, then return with technology so advanced it would be like magic to their opponents. "How many have awakened so far?" Ilara asked, making her way to the command center. "Approximately 30% of personnel across all installations," the AI replied. "Full awakening will be complete in 6.2 hours. The command center was a marvel of human ingenuity. Displays that interfaced directly with neural implants, allowing officers to process tactical information at the speed of thought. Energy systems that drew power from multiple dimensions. Weapons that could target with quantum precision. "We've detected a Caldari reconnaissance vessel," the AI informed her. "It attempted to scan our facilities before we disabled its communications and propulsion systems. The crew is unharmed but contained." "They know we're back," Ilara said, more statement than question. "Indeed. Their governing council is currently in emergency session. They have mobilized their fleet, approximately 5,000 vessels moving toward the border of the Forbidden Sector." Ilara's lips curved into a small smile. "And our fleet? 20,000 vessels of the line, fully automated. 5,000 crewed vessels with stasis-awakened personnel. Technological advantage estimated at approximately 10,000 years of development. Prepare diplomatic channels," Ilara ordered, "and move the Fifth Fleet to intercept their Armada. No offensive action unless fired upon. But if they do fire, parameters, Admiral. Precision disabling of propulsion and weapon systems only. No casualties if it can be avoided. This isn't about revenge. It's about security." Hours later, the Caldari battle fleet, led by the massive dreadnought Sovereign Might, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Forbidden Sector. Fleet Commander Drazkor stood on the bridge, surveying the empty space before them. "Scans detect nothing," Commander reported his sensor officer. "The area appears vacant." Drazkor's instincts, honed through centuries of warfare, screamed danger. "Maintain alert status. Deploy reconnaissance drones." Before the order could be carried out, space itself seemed to ripple. Where emptiness had been moments before, a massive fleet of vessels now existed. appearing not through conventional faster-than-light emergence, but simply by deactivating some form of advanced cloaking technology. The ships were unlike anything in Caldari records. They lacked the crystalline elegance of Imperium vessels, instead displaying sleek, dark hulls with lines that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. They were arranged in a perfect formation that put the Caldari fleet at the center of a three-dimensional sphere. "By the first egg," whispered Drazkor. "How many?" "At least 5,000 vessels, Commander," replied his tactical officer, voice trembling. "Their energy signatures are incalculable. Our sensors cannot determine their weapons' capability." "Open a channel," Drazkor ordered, fighting to keep his voice steady. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a human female with dark hair streaked with silver, wearing a midnight blue uniform adorned with unfamiliar insignia. "This is Admiral Ilara Chen of the United Earth Fleet," she said, her voice calm and measured. "Your vessels have entered restricted space. State your intentions." Drazkor drew himself up to his full height. "This is Fleet Commander Drazkor of the Caldari Imperium. You are trespassing in Imperial territory. Identify your species and origins immediately." A slight smile touched Admiral Chen's lips. "We are humanity, Commander. The species your ancestors tried to eradicate 15,000 years ago. We have returned." Murmurs spread across the Caldari bridge. Drazkor felt a chill run through his body. The humans were supposed to be extinct, a dangerous species eliminated before his ancestors had even achieved their present form. "Impossible," he responded. "The humans were destroyed." Chen interrupted. "No, Commander. We merely stepped away for a time. Now we have returned to reclaim our place in the galaxy." Drazkor's tactical officer whispered urgently, "Commander, our weapons have no effect on their shields. The targeting systems cannot lock onto their vessels." "You are outmatched, Commander," Admiral Chen continued. "But we have no desire for unnecessary bloodshed. You will return to your Imperium and inform your leaders that representatives of humanity will arrive in 3 cycles to discuss the new galactic reality. The Caldari Imperium does not negotiate with." Admiral Chen raised her hand slightly, and the transmission paused. In that same moment, a single beam of energy lanced out from one of the human vessels, striking the Sovereign Might with surgical precision. The beam passed through the dreadnought's shields as if they didn't exist, severing the connections to its main weapon systems. The transmission resumed, with Admiral Chen's expression unchanged. "That was a demonstration, Commander. Had we wished to destroy your vessel, we could have done so. Instead, we disabled only your primary weapons. Consider this mercy a gesture of our intentions." Drazkor stood in stunned silence as warnings flashed across his tactical displays. His mighty dreadnought, the pride of the Caldari fleet, had been neutered with a single shot. 3 cycles, Commander," Admiral Chen repeated. "We will expect your leaders to be prepared for discussion." The transmission ended, and the human fleet rippled out of existence once more, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them invisible to Caldari sensors. Commander Drazkor stared at the empty space where they had been, understanding with perfect clarity that a new age had begun. The age of humanity had returned to the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Reckoning. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Caldari Imperium had never hosted beings from outside the recognized galactic community. For 10,000 years, the massive chamber with its soaring crystalline spires and floating light arrays had been the exclusive domain of the 97 species that comprised the Imperium. Today, that tradition ended. Grand Imperator Vexthal sat upon the radiant throne, flanked by High Strategist Malkor and representatives from the most powerful species in the Imperium. The mood was tense, the air thick with anxious pheromones from a dozen different biologies. Historical archives had been unsealed, ancient records consulted, and the truth about humanity, long buried in classified repositories, had sent shockwaves through the Imperium's leadership. "They come," announced the herald, voice echoing through the chamber. The massive doors parted, and a delegation of humans entered. They wore no environmental suits despite the atmosphere being calibrated for Caldari physiology. Instead, they walked confidently, seemingly unaffected by what should have been uncomfortable conditions for their species. At their head was Admiral Ilara Chen, flanked by what appeared to be military and scientific advisors. The human delegation, intoned the herald, led by Admiral Ilara Chen of the United Earth Fleet. Ilara stepped forward, her gaze moving deliberately around the chamber, taking in each alien species before settling on Vexthul. Grand Imperator, she acknowledged with a slight nod, neither a bow of submission nor a gesture of disrespect. Admiral, Vexthul responded, you stand in the heart of an imperium that spans the galaxy. Your return is unexpected. Inconvenient, perhaps, Ilara suggested, a hint of steel in her voice, but hardly unexpected. Your ancestors knew the risk when they chose extermination over coexistence. Murmurs swept through the assembly. Vexthul raised a hand for silence. The actions of our ancestors 15,000 years ago were genocide, Ilara interrupted. Let's dispense with diplomatic niceties, Imperator. Your ancestors, along with 5 other species, formed a coalition with the express purpose of eradicating humanity. They attacked without provocation, destroyed 3 colony worlds, and attempted to annihilate Earth itself. The historical records indicate that humans were deemed too dangerous to be allowed unrestricted expansion. Countered Malachor, your technology was advancing at an unprecedented rate. Your cultural aggressiveness was well documented. Ilara smiled thinly. And so the solution was our extinction, an interesting moral calculation. One of her advisors stepped forward. Activating a small device, a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing Earth as it appeared 15,000 years ago, a blue-green jewel orbiting a yellow star. This is what your ancestors saw, the advisor explained. A beautiful world, home to billions of humans. And this, the image change, showing Earth wreathed in flames, its surface cracked and broken, oceans boiling away into space, is what they believed they had accomplished, the death of our homeworld. Vexthul's inner eyelids flickered in the Caldari equivalent of a frown. If your world was destroyed, how do you stand before us now? Phase shift technology, Ilara explained. When we realized we couldn't win a conventional war against your coalition, our scientists developed a way to move our entire planet and major colonies into a parallel dimensional phase. What your ancestors witnessed was an elaborate illusion, energy released from the phase transition that mimicked planetary destruction. The hologram shifted again, showing Earth in its present state, transformed almost beyond recognition. The continents had been reshaped, massive structures extending into orbit, the entire planet pulsing with energy that defied conventional understanding. For 15,000 years, humanity has existed in a state of accelerated development. Ilara continued, time flows differently in the phase space we created. While 15 millennia passed for you, we experienced nearly 50,000 years of technological and social evolution. The assembled aliens stared in stunned silence at the transformed Earth. The implications were staggering. Our fleets never truly left the galaxy, added another human advisor. They retreated to predetermined positions, activated stasis fields, and waited. Automated systems continued research and development, building and improving our technology according to plans laid down by our scientists. Vexthul leaned forward. And now you have returned for revenge. No, Ilara said firmly. If revenge had been our goal, this conversation would not be happening. Your civilization would already be in ruins. Then what do you want? Demanded an elder from one of the founding Imperium species. A recalibration of the Galactic Order, Ilara replied. Earth and her colonies will reclaim their original territories. We will establish a safety buffer of 500 light-years beyond those boundaries. Within that sphere, we will pursue our destiny without interference. And beyond that boundary, Malachor asked cautiously, beyond that, The galaxy continues as before, with one critical difference. The systematic oppression of developing species ends today. The forced assimilation of pre-FTL civilizations ends today. The cultural homogenization practiced by the Imperium ends today. Angry voices erupted from several delegations. Vexthul raised his hand again for silence. You presume to dictate terms to an Imperium that has maintained peace and order for 10,000 years, he asked, his voice deceptively soft. We do, Ilara confirmed, because the peace you speak of has been built on subjugation. The order you cherish has come at the cost of freedom and cultural diversity. We have studied your Imperium during our absence, Vexthul. We know of the rebellions suppressed, the species forced to abandon their heritage, the genetic modifications imposed on non-compliant populations. She gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show various worlds throughout the Imperium, each revealing evidence of military action against indigenous populations. This is not peace, Ilara said. This is tyranny disguised as harmony. High Strategist Malachor stepped forward, her scales flushed with anger. Your accusations are based on limited observation. The stability of the galaxy requires. We're not interested in your justifications, Ilara cut in. Only in results. You have 3 standard cycles to communicate our terms to every world in the Imperium. After that, we will begin enforcement. Enforcement, echoed Vexthul. You speak as if your terms have already been accepted. They have been, Imperator. The only question is whether the transition will be peaceful or not. With that, Admiral Chen and her delegation turned to leave. The audacity stunned the assembly into momentary silence. This is not how diplomatic negotiations are conducted, called out Malachor. Ilara paused at the doorway. This is not a negotiation, High Strategist. This is notification of a new reality. As the human delegation departed, the assembly erupted into chaos. Species that had existed in hierarchical harmony for millennia now faced an existential challenge to their way of life. Some called for immediate military action. Others counseled caution, pointing to the technological gap demonstrated by the human fleet. Grand Imperator Vexthul watched the discord with narrowed eyes. In his 10,000-year reign, he had never faced such a crisis. The revelation of humanity's survival and return represented more than a military threat. It undermined the very foundation of the Imperium's historical narrative. They must be bluffing, insisted War Marshal Drakath of the Valkyrid Dominion, one of the Imperium's most aggressive member species. No civilization could achieve such advancement, even in 15,000 years. Their technology defies our understanding, countered Science Director Elna, her tentacles waving in agitation. The phase shift capability alone represents a level of physics beyond our theoretical models. Whether they bluff or not, said Vexthul, silencing the debate, we cannot allow an outside force to dictate terms to the Imperium. Marshal Drakath, prepare your fleets. When the 3 cycles have elapsed, you will lead an expedition to test their resolve. With pleasure, Imperator, Drakath replied, mandibles clicking in anticipation. 3 cycles passed with remarkable speed. Throughout the Imperium, rumors spread about the return of a species from ancient history. On worlds where oppression had been most severe, those rumors kindled hope. On the central worlds of the founding species, they sparked fear. War Marshal Drakath assembled the largest battle fleet in Imperium history. 10,000 vessels drawn from all major military powers within the Alliance. They gathered at a staging area near the boundary specified by the humans, weapons charged, crews prepared for what many believed would be a brief and decisive demonstration of Imperium might. When the fleet launched its advance across the boundary, they encountered no immediate resistance. For nearly an hour, they proceeded deeper into what the humans had claimed as their territory. War Marshal Drakath, commanding from the dreadnought Eternal Dominance, began to believe the humans had retreated. Perhaps they recognized the futility of opposing our combined might. He suggested to his command staff, Proceed to the coordinates of their nearest detected installation. The fleet continued forward, until reality itself seemed to distort around them. Space rippled and folded, and suddenly the Imperium fleet found itself surrounded by human vessels that had seemingly materialized from nowhere. Not dozens or hundreds, but thousands, far more than had been displayed in their initial encounter. Before Drakath could issue orders, every system on his dreadnought shut down simultaneously. Across the fleet, the same phenomenon occurred. Propulsion, weapons, shields, and even life support systems all deactivated in perfect synchronization. Only communication remained functional, allowing Drakath to receive a transmission from a human vessel. "This is Fleet Admiral James Chen," said a human male who bore a striking resemblance to Admiral Ilara Chen. "Your intrusion into sovereign human space represents an act of war. However, we have chosen to respond with restraint." Drakath's mandibles clicked in fury. "You have disabled our fleet. This is an act of aggression." "No, Marshal," Admiral James replied calmly. "Aggression would have been destroying your vessels. Instead, we have temporarily suspended your technological capabilities. Your life support systems will reactivate in 30 seconds. Your propulsion will remain offline until you have been escorted back to Imperium space. You cannot expect the Imperium to submit to your demands." "We expect the Imperium to recognize reality," James corrected. "The galaxy has changed. The sooner your leadership accepts this, the fewer lives will be lost in pointless resistance." True to his word, life support systems reactivated across the Imperium fleet. Then, to the astonishment of Caldari observers, each vessel found itself caught in some form of tractor beam, being pulled inexorably back toward Imperium space. The message was clear. The humans possessed technology that rendered conventional military resistance futile. When the humiliated fleet returned to Imperium space, War Marshal Drakath found himself summoned to an emergency session of the High Council. The mood was grim, the implications of their defeat impossible to ignore. "They could have destroyed us," Malcor admitted, her earlier bravado gone. "Every vessel, every crew member, wiped out in an instant. Instead, they chose to demonstrate their power without bloodshed." "A psychological tactic," growled Drakath. "They seek to demoralize us before the real battle." "Shepherds," repeated Drakath incredulously. "There will be no real battle," said Grand Imperator Vexful, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision. "We cannot win a war against them." Shock rippled through the council chamber. Vexful, who had ruled the Imperium with absolute authority for 10 millennia, was acknowledging defeat without a true battle being fought. "We tried to destroy them once," he continued. "We failed. Now, 15,000 years later, they have returned not as conquerors, but as shepherds." "Shepherds," repeated Drakath incredulously. "Yes," confirmed Vexful. "They could have annihilated our civilization. Instead, they have offered terms that, while humbling, allow us to continue our existence. They do not seek our extinction, as we once sought theirs. They seek to reshape the galaxy into something different." Science Director Elma's tentacles waved in agreement. Their terms focus primarily on ending practices that many have questioned in recent millennia. The forced assimilation of developing species, the suppression of cultural diversity. These are policies that have been increasingly difficult to justify, even within our own ranks. "You would have us surrender 10,000 years of Imperium tradition based on a single demonstration," demanded Drakath. "I would have us survive," replied Vexthul, "and perhaps in time, learn from a species that has shown more wisdom in victory than our ancestors showed in what they believed was theirs." 1 month later, representatives from all 97 species of the former Caldari Imperium gathered in orbit around a neutral world to sign the Galactic Concord. Admiral Ilara Chen represented humanity. Her expression solemn as species after species acknowledged the new reality. The Concord established a framework for peaceful coexistence. The human sphere of influence would remain sacrosanct. Developing civilizations throughout the galaxy would be protected from interference until they achieved spaceflight on their own terms. Cultural autonomy would be respected for all species, ending the forced homogenization that had characterized Imperium rule. As the ceremony concluded, Grand Imperator Vex Thul approached Admiral Chen privately. "You could have destroyed us," he said simply. "Why didn't you?" Ilara regarded him thoughtfully. "Because that's what your ancestors would have done. We spent 15,000 years not just advancing our technology, Imperator, but evolving as a species. We learned that power without wisdom leads to exactly the kind of civilization your Imperium became, one that mistakes control for harmony, submission for peace." "And now," he asked, "what happens now that humans have returned to the galaxy?" Ilara's gaze drifted to the viewport, where the assembled diplomatic vessels of nearly 100 species floated against the backdrop of stars. "Now we all have the opportunity to build something better. Not an imperium, not a human dominion, but a true community of civilizations, each unique, each valued for their differences rather than punished for them. You truly believe such a thing is possible?" "I do," Ilara said with quiet conviction. "Because the greatest strength of humanity has never been our technology, Imperator. It's been our capacity to imagine better futures and then work to create them." As Vex Thul contemplated her words, Earth fleet vessels throughout the galaxy were already beginning the work of dismantling oppressive systems, freeing subjugated worlds, and introducing concepts that had been forbidden under Imperium rule. Not through force, but through example and opportunity. Humanity had returned to a galaxy that had tried to erase them, and in their return, they offered not vengeance, but redemption, a chance to break the cycles of domination and fear that had defined galactic civilization for too long. The year was 50,000 CE, and the illusion that power must always corrupt had been shattered. A new age had begun among the stars.